Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching our special series, Budget of Hope, with me, Frank Rausan Pereira. Well, the budget session of Parliament has begun with President Kovind's address to the joint session of Parliament. Nirmala Sitharaman has tabled the Economic Survey 2020-2021 in the Lok Sabha, and the GDP growth is seen expanding by 11% in the 2021-2022 fiscal. Gross domestic product contracted by a record 23.9% in April, June, and by 7.5% in the second quarter. For the full fiscal year 2020-2021, the survey projected a contraction of 7.7%. The economic survey, which was battered by the coronavirus lockdown, is expected to see a strong recovery in the 2021-22 fiscal year. To talk about the state of the economy and what to expect from the upcoming budget, I have with me on the program a very special guest today, Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairman, NITI Aayog. Dr. Kumar, thank you for joining me on the program here on Rajya Sabha Television. Firstly, your thoughts on the V-shaped recovery. That has been a word that has been doing the rounds for a few weeks now, and India certainly seems to be on an upsurge as far as the economic activity is concerned, and the IMF also very strongly believes so.
Thanks, Frank, and good to be here. I had been saying for quite a while, actually, after the second quarter results came out, that the Indian economy is resilient. The Indian economy will surprise most people by its recovery, and I think this is what we have seen now. And all the agencies in the world have actually been forced to revise their estimates of India's growth in the fiscal year 21-22 upwards. And this is because, as I said, our corporate sector and our small and medium enterprises have all shown a sort of resilience which I expected them to show. And this is why the economy is now on track to record the highest ever rate of growth ever since independence of 11.5%, according to the IMF. I think the economic survey, quite rightly so, has been a bit conservative and said that it's going to be 11%. And this is going to be based on a small positive recovery, positive growth rate in the third and the fourth quarter of this year, that is fiscal 2020-2021. But my sort of biggest optimism comes from the fact that we have used these last 10 months, 12 months for undertaking a number of structural reforms which will help to sustain this growth rate in the years to come, 2021-2 and 2022-3, because I don't agree with those people who think that this is a flash in the pan and that India will go back to having a sort of 4.5-5% rate of growth. So that's the more optimistic and forward-looking trajectory that I see for the Indian economy. And the V-shaped recovery is there, as all of us can see.
What's working in our favor, Dr. Kumar? The world over, we've seen that, the economy is in a bad shape. Yet, India seems to be the brightest spot as far as economic recovery is concerned. What are the factors that have contributed to this?
Well, several factors. I think one, as the economic survey points out, we got the balance between saving lives and livelihoods quite right. Because we didn't use up all our firepower in distributing and helicopter money all over the economy, as a number of my economist friends had been suggesting. Because we knew that by doing that, by just pushing in money and increasing disposable income at a time when the supply side was very constrained because of the lockdown, that would only result in inflation. Because people would not be able to use that money to purchase goods, and also would and the industry would not be able to supply those goods. So what we did was to stagger that infusion of stimulus in a staggered manner. So as the economy opened up, the supply side was able to respond to the rising demand, and that's what has meant that the demand has taken hold and the recovery has taken hold. So that's one part. The second part, I think, is our own agricultural sector, which very early on, I think in the end of March 2020, the government declared that to be a essential service, as a result of which all the lockdown all the lockdown norms were not applied to that sector, and that growth rate has held up, and is about 3.4%, for 2021, which is somewhat little higher than the long-term average for agriculture. So agriculture, which contributes about 18% to the economy, but employs about more than 45 to 50%, sort of provided, as it were, the base from which the recovery would take place, and the rural demand continued to remain buoyant, which has shown up in the sale of tractors and fertilizers and and two-wheelers. That's the second part. The third part was the government's, the government's very strong effort to make sure that all those who were returning back to the villages got jobs, and that the Manrega budget was raised by 60% to a lakh of crores, and the number of mandates generated under Manrega was a record for all times, which again meant that people had disposable income and were not destitute and didn't suffer, those who went back from the cities to the villages. And then finally, I would say that the enterprise of the Indian business, whether it's small, medium, or large, to be able to cater to the changing situation, along with the help of the government, which is very important, and which was to provide the credit guarantee, the guarantee to the banks that if the money they lent, the working capital, the extra working capital that they lent to the enterprises, the government would take the 10% loss. Now that made the banks far more confident of lending out money to the small and medium enterprises and to the large ones. So all of that put together, the size of the stimulus, the shape and the composition of the stimulus, the timing of the stimulus, all of that we got right to be able to generate this recovery that you see now taking place.
Let's talk about another aspect and something that I would like to take forward with you. As far as COVID management, vaccine distribution, and vaccine development and its correlation with the economy.
Yeah, this is a very important point that you raised, Frank, because it is the successful rollout of the vaccination plan which will infuse the necessary confidence in the sectors where the demand has been hit the hardest, which are called the close contact sectors, which are the service sectors, the hospitality, entertainment, tourism, travel, where people have to come together, etc. Now, these have taken the biggest hits, from the smallest to the largest entities here. Now, here, the successful rollout of vaccination will be the key, because unless all those people who've now been vaccinated will feel far more confident to go back to their normal behavior in terms of travel or in terms of, social outing, etc., etc. Now, here I think India would set an example of successfully rolling out the largest vaccination program in the world. And I think within a fortnight or so of its launch, you already have 30 lakh people being vaccinated, 3 million, which is already placed us, I think, in the 5th or the 6th largest vaccination numbers in the world. And as we go forward by the end of March, you will have 10 million, you will have, yes, 3 crore, 30 million people, being vaccinated, which are all the frontline workers and are, doctors, nurses, policemen. And then you go up to 30 crore during the course of this year. I think that, once we get that, then this will hasten, will speed up the recovery, even in those sectors, which have been held back so far. So the link is very clear. Therefore, it's important for us to ensure that the vaccination drive is successfully implemented.
Since we're talking about the services sector, let us dwell upon that for a little while. The services sector feels a little hard done by over the last 10 months. It contributes for about 25% of India's workforce. So it's a very important sector. It's a very important sector as far as the GDP of the country is concerned as well. So does this mean that in the budget we can see a major chunk being dedicated for the services sector, Dr. Kumar?
Frank, let me not anticipate the budget because I think that's just it's just tomorrow. So I mean, I don't want to preempt what the Honourable Finance Minister has to say. But I'm sure that combined with the successful vaccination and also some of the public expenditure that could go towards improving the infrastructure and towards improving the logistics, and improving the transport, etc. That will all help, the services sector. So I think, and there might be, some more succor to those who are employed in the sector. But as I said, it is the more important thing is to ensure that our vaccination goes ahead the right way, and more important it is to make sure that all the drivers of the services sector, which are the logistics, the infrastructure, the training, the skills, all that come into play, and all that are taken care of, because that will give the required boost and the required momentum to the services sector growth.
Absolutely. Let's also talk about healthcare and health infrastructure as a whole, and how it is important to to do something there, and how does it help as far as the large scale economy is concerned as well.
Absolutely right. I mean, the COVID, the pandemic has shown that the public health infrastructure has been the most critical and the most relevant part of fighting the pandemic, and it stood up very well. I mean, I must say it stood up well, but some weaknesses were clear, especially in the smaller towns, tier 2, 3 towns, and that has pointed to the need for further improving our public health infrastructure going forward. But not only public health, but also the private health infrastructure, because a large number of people depend on private providers of health, of curative treatments, plus also preventive treatment. And I think what we need, therefore, is a concerted effort from both the public and the private sector to improve the delivery of health services, to improve the health infrastructure, to improve the health education system, to improve the numbers of doctors per 10,000 population as well as that of nurses. And I think all of that has come to limelight, and I think the government is committed to doing this. We in NITI Aayog have been working towards it, and the state governments have to play a major role here. And the state health infrastructure, the district hospitals have to be improved. And I think there can be a lot of benefit, there can be a lot of gain by having successful, attractive public-private partnership models in which the government and the private sector could come together to provide the best facility for the people to fight any further such pandemic, or even to take care of the sort of day-to-day health problems that we are faced with. The Indian health sector has stood up to the challenge of the pandemic, but I think it's now clear that we need to improve it further to make sure that the people get even more confident of being able to receive the services, the health services that they deserve going forward.
You spoke about better cooperation between the states and the center. So this is an aspect that I want to take forward with you, Dr. Kumar. Over the years, we've seen multiplicity of schemes really between the center and the states, and this seems to be an issue because we have over 250 to 300 schemes, for poverty alleviation, and I for one would think that they are, a few too many. So do you believe that we need to have some kind of, coordination and synergy between the states and the center so that we don't have a multiplicity of these schemes?
Absolutely. A better coordination and better synchronization of all the efforts at the center and state levels will yield much better buck for the bang, much better bang for the buck that we spend. There are, as you say, about 340 centrally sponsored schemes that we have. And in NITI Aayog, we have an organization called the Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office, which has been now asked by the Department of Expenditure to evaluate the performance of all these schemes on the basis of their output and outcomes. And I'm glad to tell you that all these evaluations have been undertaken already, and the advice has been given to the Department of Expenditure to try and allocate resources according to the performance based on outcomes. And there also there is a suggestion to rationalize the number of schemes, because the number of ministries have a large number of schemes where the allocations are very minor, which don't produce the result, which cannot produce the results that they have. But apart from the rationalization of these schemes and a better valuation and monitoring of the centrals of the schemes at the central level, I appreciate what you said about the state governments taking on the responsibility to making sure that the implementation of these schemes, which is largely in their hands, is further improved. And we get real-time data, for their performance, for their, for how they are, for the progress that they are making, and especially in the health sector, because it is a concurrent sector. I think it will be critical for the center and states to make sure that all aspects of health delivery, whether it is the modern medicine or the Ayurveda or Unani, homeopathy or Siddha, all of them are integrated and brought together to be able to deliver, to the people the best thing for. By the way, this has been one of the reasons of our success, which is that all forms of medical services were brought together and played a role in fighting the pandemic. So so a kind of integration of all these services and to bear upon more efficiently the problem at hand, I think will deliver to us much better results. And this coordination that you're talking about, I think, is an absolute necessity. And it's NITI Aayog's mandate to ensure that we get what we call cooperative federalism, in the country, because that is the way forward in a country as big and diverse as ours. That the states cooperate with the center and with each other, and also replicate the best practices that are there in some states, so that we get the best results across the country.
In a country as vast as ours, the economic survey also talks about bringing down the variation between the bare necessities that we have in rural India and urban India and across populations. So last year, or in the previous economic survey, we saw the entry of Thalinomics. In this economic survey, we saw the entry of the bare necessities index, a page taken out of Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book. So, let's talk about the importance of social sector and social sector spending, Dr. Kumar.
Well, I mean, this is critical because, we have to be committed to lift those at the bottom of the pyramid. I think it was one of the World Bank chief economists, Francois Bourgogne, who mentioned, who emphasized the fact that it's probably critical to measure the growth in the income of the last decile of the population. Those who are at the bottommost 10% of the population, if their income growth is satisfactory, then you can assume and expect that the rest of the population is doing as well. So I think social sector spending, which is accessible to those at the bottom of the pyramid, or in other words, a successful implementation of the Antyodaya program has been the foundation, has been the cornerstone of this government's policy making in the last 7 years, and that you've seen a whole host of programs. Therefore, whether it's Ujjwala or Jan Dhan or and so many others, actually Matrabandha or and so on. I'm forgetting a few names, but nonetheless, and the economic survey does very well to point that out. So that and the ease of living, improving the ease of living for the common man has been the cornerstone of policy making in the country. And I think this economic survey does well to say that we now need to have this basic necessity index that we should, and we could have a competition among the states as to who is doing better on this index, because that would make sure that they compete to improve the ease of living for those at the bottom of the pyramid. But here, Frank, I want to also bring in the fact that you have to increase the size of the pie to be able to deliver this social services better. So it does come down at the bottom line to improve the growth in the economy. You can only do that much with what you have. So I think therefore the economic survey's emphasis on growth and saying that please don't be scared of of the so-called rating agencies who would only look at some debt to GDP ratio and then go on and so talk about it. It's much better to now focus on getting growth up and sustaining it so that the denominator rises, and as that rises, all other ratios will begin to look better, with the growth, and also our social expenditure will continue to improve as we go forward.
Since we are here, Dr. Kumar, a follow-up question on this particular aspect. Do we at some level also need to widen the idea of bare necessities, considering that we are an aspirational India, we are a growing India with a lot of ambitions, and it just can't be roti, kapda and makan?
No, absolutely not. And and good quality school education, good quality and full access to public health, to preventive health. Those two are necessary. Also energy, access to energy, and as you notice in all of these aspects, in a much broader spectrum of of ease of living or of the consumption basket, the government has been doing it and is committed to do it. For example, the scheme of Har Ghar Mein Nal, and on which 3 crores, I think 10 crores have already been provided. The electricity to all villages in the country has already been achieved. You want to improve, the sort of the better cleaning cooking fuel, and now the national education policy, which has been announced this year, has so much focus on providing better quality education, starting at the preschool level up to the higher education level. So I think, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm a votary of the fact that up to the secondary level, education, public education should be accessible to all, high quality public education to all, because that is what ensures an equality of opportunity. And I think the government must be committed to improve doing that. And the government is, otherwise the national education policy and now in NITI Aayog and otherwise, we are committed to the implementation of this policy across all the states. So you are absolutely right. The necessity index has to, one, go beyond, surely beyond roti, kapda and makan, and include shiksha and swasth and paryavaran and hygiene and water and energy. But also it has to improve as we go along, and therefore it can't remain stagnant. The index has to be a dynamic one, so that as we improve, as the economy improves, the quality that you deliver to the people must also improve, so that they feel as much benefited by the growth that you have, rather than feel being left out or marginalized from the growth that takes place in the coming years.
And, as I come to the end of the interview, I'd like to take up another vertical with you as well, Dr. Kumar. The pandemic has shown us the importance of technology and what we can do with technology. Up to a certain level, we are doing wonderfully well as far as technology is concerned, be it the financial side of things or, be it in terms of the direct benefit transfer and so many of these other schemes that we are running with the use of technology. But what about cutting-edge technology? As we move into the future, that is a very crucial aspect that we need to focus on.
Again, you're absolutely right, and I think we in NITI Aayog have recognized this. Therefore, we have brought out a paper called the India's Strategy for Artificial Intelligence, and now we are working on how to bring in artificial intelligence and its use to critical sectors like health and education and agriculture. We have talked about establishing centers of excellence for artificial intelligence, because that's the frontier technology that we'll be talking about. But more importantly, or equally importantly, we also are very much engaged in improving the entire ecosystem for innovation and technology in the country. The Atal Innovation Mission that has been established under the guidance of the Prime Minister 5 years ago has now made sure that there are more than 7,500 Atal Tinkering Labs established in the secondary schools all across the country, 60% of them in government schools. And there the children young people have access to the latest technology, 3D printing, optical sensors, the sort of electronics, the microelectronic circuitry, all of that. Plus, we have established 100 incubation centers because we need to shift gears from being either a sort of rote education or a jugaad nation of people to a system, to an ecosystem where innovation is the key and where people from a young age and all across the board become engaged and accepting of technology. And here I must sound a very optimistic note, which is that we as a nation are very open and adaptable to new technology. We have always been open to change, and our people adapt to change with much more alacrity than anywhere else, I find. And I think that is where the hope is, that India will be able to use the new technology and leapfrog some of our development stages and use this technology to have the largest startup network in the world anywhere, and then to use this technology also to again deliver better and higher quality services to those at the bottom of the pyramid, because that's now possible with this technology, and also improve the accountability of the delivery of services at the last mile. And by the way, the spread of optical fiber through our BharatNet schemes now to more than 250,000 gram panchayats, and their utilization by the local bodies will again ensure that technology is at the forefront, cutting edge technology is at the forefront of this change momentum that we will experience in the years going ahead.
And on that optimistic note, Dr. Kumar, I'd like to call it a wrap on this edition of Budget of Hope. Thank you so much for joining me on the program, and always a pleasure to have you here on Rajya Sabha Television.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you very much.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this telecast. See you again next time.